Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Have a holly jolly rancher Christmas. It's the best time of the year.
Keep going.
Those who are watching on YouTube know that we have a bag of candy there. Shout out to Andrew Trucker. He sent us a couple bags, I think about 10 pounds of Jolly Ranchers. Those that don't know Andrew Trucker, if it doesn't give away, is a trucker.
I heard they fell off the back of a truck.
Yep, in a box though, I think, and
okay.
they're not smashed, and it was still sealed.
I had one. I just had one.
Yeah. So thank you for the
I just love how he
Christmas
thought about
gift.
us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice gift.
Thanks.
Everyone has been reaping the benefits of the Jolly Ranchers around the office.
I find myself secretly hoping more expensive things fall off the back of a truck.
Okay.
Like a Peloton or something.
Yeah, like a Peloton. Andrew, a Peloton, if you happen to be shipping a Peloton.
Some AirPod Max.
That's actually literally what I was thinking. And then someone went Peloton. Because AirPods,
I would
it's
like
one of
that.
those things that I would never spend that kind of money, but if someone gifted them to me, I still would feel a little weird, actually. Because they're so expensive.
Do you feel like we have this conversation a lot of like things Alex wants?
Yeah, I just feel like it's just like
we need.
it's like the sponsorship moment where he's just like, hey, if you want to give me stuff, feel free.
Yeah.
Bless my ministry.
He doesn't want any.
It's, I grew up charismatic, and
Yeah.
it's just,
You
it's in me.
want people
You don't
to
want
get,
the cheap version.
you're hoping that Andrew gets, 70 pounds of Jolly Ranchers back to him.
Yes, sevenfold of Jolly Ranchers. Lord, increase those Jolly Ranchers in his life. Yep.
Anyways, do we have a voicemail to save us from this
We have a
conversation?
voicemail. Here it is.
Maybe. Nope, we don't. Rewind.
Thanks.
Oh, we do. I think technical difficulties. Let's hit play again.
Yeah.
Hi, now that it's the Christmas season, I would love to hear how Jess's Christmas edition of her Hallmark movie would go. Thanks.
There it is. We had the Thanksgiving version. Is that what it was? It was a Halloween. It was just a fall because it was a fall festival.
Fall festival. Yeah.
Fall
and,
festival.
and now it's just the never-ending saga. Is this a trilogy now? I forget. Or is this?
No,
just
I
a
think we're
sequel?
I think I'm gonna start a new one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This
Maybe
is
like a new series.
Clearly, our listeners would love to hear it. So,
All right, we'll keep it short. I feel like the Christmas one is gonna start in a small little maybe mountainside town where
village. Sorry, it's your story. I think village around Christmas just sounds better, but okay, keep going.
Alex will be on the editing team. Anyways, a woman comes to maybe visit her. She's coming to visit her family that she hasn't been to in a couple years because she's from New York and she works at a big law firm. And
she
her
does.
parents own a hotel that is being threatened around the holidays to be bought by a big developer. And so she can look over documents and she's trying to figure out how she can save her family's business and get this guy out of town. And she goes to a coffee shop and the guy behind her starts judging her order. Because, obviously she's from New York. So she wants like a venti whipped latte
Soy.
with,
Caramel,
soy, maybe a little
drizzled.
oat milk, all of it. You just and some
And
sprinkles on top.
and she wants to be 0 calories as well.
And they have a exchange that, obviously doesn't end up well. And she goes with her coffee to her father's hotel. And who is staying there but this guy who is representing the developer that wants to buy the land.
Okay.
It wants to buy the hotel. So they are tasked to work together. And obviously there's a Christmas festival
Yeah.
coming.
Snow.
Obviously there's snow. And they are forced to work together at this festival. There's gingerbread houses to be built and trees to be decorated. And obviously somehow they keep bumping into each other. And we all know what happens in the end. They fall in love, and he figures out that developer should not be developing on this historical land, that this is a historical monument that's been in the town for 150 years. And it ends, the father retires, they get married and take over the hotel. We're going to call this.
I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because I'm amazed at how fast you come up with these.
You're like the chat GPT.
I'm telling you, I have not thought about this.
Hallmark movies.
Yeah. We're going to call it Just GPT. Hallmark movies generator.
We're going to call it.
Oh, yeah. They need a title for this.
Snow in Love.
I'm Snow in Love.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's perfect because these type of movies, they don't always go with their
Man.
their titles.
Well, if CCC starts its own streaming platform, like CCC Plus or something like that,
I feel like I could definitely write some
we
short
could just
stories.
start
that was
pumping out
completely
content.
like off the dome. Like I can't rap, but man, I can bust out a Hallmark.
Just, you imagine all the possibilities. That's exciting. I hope maybe people listening want to maybe fund our startup of our streaming platform so Jess's movies can get made. Really wholesome content for the whole family.
It will be on Right Now Media for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And if you have any other ideas about things, such as maybe the fact that this is our last episode of 2023, episode 199, and we'll be coming back in the new year with episode 200. We'd love to hear some of your suggestions for what you'd like to see, who you'd like to hear from. If you have any fun ideas, you can reach out to us. You could leave us a voicemail like this kind gentleman who left us a voicemail for Jess's story. That number is 402-885-9930. You can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org. But yeah, I think we're excited about that, but we are going to take a little winter break, Christmas break, and we'll see when we come back from that. But without any further ado, we're going to be talking about the price of a bargain today. Things like Temu, Shein, I don't know. There's probably a lot of other Wish.com, Amazon Basics, all those things. And kind of looking at the morality around that and the Christian's perspective on what we should be accountable to. So stay tuned for that. Alex, Jess, what's the price of a bargain? That's the question I have for you today. What does it cost to get a bargain? I think most people get pretty excited about a good deal, right?
I didn't know if this is going Price is Right and we were supposed to.
Yeah, if you guys could give me a price and then I'll tell you if it's right, high or low. What would 10 pounds of Jolly Ranchers cost you? Like I mentioned before, today we're talking about specifically the Chinese-owned shopping app Temu, but also Shein and some of the other places on the internet where we kind of cut out the middleman and go straight to the manufacturer of, and a lot of times these people are employing maybe slave labor or child laborers and things like that. And then that savings gets passed along to us. And I think like any warm-blooded American, we like a blue light special as much as the next person. So, do you ever consider it? Like I know for me, I just don't think about it. Oh, if I found a good deal, I'm like, oh, it's a good deal. I personally haven't used the Temu app. I always thought it was kind of like a meme with the kids, like a joke, like, oh, I got the Wish.com version of those AirPods, and it was like that's so funny that that's just what you say. Like now it's kind of like the Temu version. But when I was visiting my dad over Thanksgiving, he was wearing a nice like brown leather jacket and told me he told me he got it on Temu. My dad's 82 years old and he's using Temu, and I almost chuckled because I was just like I wouldn't have expected that. I never would have expected that. So, it's definitely reaching people everywhere.
It certainly is.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of marketing. So there's been a lot of writing, especially about this lately, for a lot of reasons. I think one is the ethical, concerns about, slave labor, as you brought up, Eric. Mm-hmm. And then there's also like a lot of writing around small businesses and how, online shopping in general affects, small businesses, and that conversation's been happening for a while, but even more like places that you can get some of these trinkets or whatever for cheaper, how that affects even American-owned, quote-unquote, businesses, or just the American economics, which is different. It's very different than like Amazon in a lot of ways, though I think we'll talk about some of the things maybe that they do that flirt with the unethical lines, but it's different in the fact that most everything you're literally ordering it from China and it's being shipped here or other countries and not really employing, I guess at some level it helps the postal service or DHL or whoever, they ship it through. But there's a lot of, not a lot of people American based are employed. So the economics behind it are just very different. So there's a lot of stuff happening, investigations that are happening in the world around some of these places as they've uncovered that this isn't just like not real stuff. Like there is real slave labor that happens in some of the places. It's not everything that's purchased on Temu or Shein or anything like that has to be, but it's just kind of how they're not regulating it. And so the chances are pretty high of something like that, especially some regions of the world. So it's fascinating.
Are they going product by product? Isn't that what they were doing, is going product by product and saying like, okay, was this thing that's being offered is a product of slave labor or unethically being produced?
I don't know if they're doing product by product. I think because basically it's like a mall of sorts. Like a lot of people are able to essentially post their products on, Temu and sell through them as a kind of the host site or whatever. And so, it's by store. Certain products are probably, I don't know. I don't have the full information there. And they are marketing a ton. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Eric, which is probably why your 82-year-old dad was able to like see this, I mean, if you've looked up probably any kind of product online, he looked up a leather jacket, and he's like, holy cow, I'm not spending $300 on a leather jacket. Probably 15 minutes later, he got an image of a leather jacket that probably looks similar. That was like $12.99.
Yeah.
And so they've really, through technology and advertising, they're putting a lot of money into that.
I saw one of their commercials. I think it was just a YouTube ad or something like that, but it's their catch line or their slogan was "Shop like a billionaire," and thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, they're pretty much. I mean, they definitely know how to market to people well, and they probably have the money to do that, and I mean, that's what it makes people feel like. I can afford to buy everything I want.
And especially in our economy right now and just how people are struggling, like you want that feeling and you don't get it very often or at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Where you feel like, oh, I don't have to budget, or I can get a lot for a little bit of money.
Well, and I guess I've always just had bad experiences with knockoff versions of anything. So I'm always just a little trepidatious about any of this. So I'm not going to probably buy a smartwatch on there or AirPods or something like that. But I could see I think, there's appeal to certain demographics, especially like teenagers, things like that. Like I could see where it's like, oh, well, mom and dad aren't going to buy this for me, but I could afford this knockoff version of it, and maybe it's good enough or whatever.
Yeah. And I think brand, is just different. I mean, as far as clothing brands are very different than I remember even when I was a kid, whether it's like some of the bigger brands like Tommy Hilfiger or, there was like Abercrombie and Fit, like certain brands, like you just wore and brands boasted. I mean, and it annoyed me all the time. Like they had just their logo as huge as they could all over things. And now it seems like there's a lot of brands are shrinking back in that, especially in the fashion industry. So you might not even be able to look at a piece of clothing and know who made it. And so therefore, especially in the fashion industry, you're able to see and purchase what's called fast fashion, which a lot of what these companies do is they see things that are trending at, when people walk down what are those called? Fashion shows, so they'll see what's trending and then they will, as quick as they can.
It's called a runway that they walk down.
Yes. Catwalks, runways. Is that, anyway.
You do your little dance.
Yeah. So what they will do is take some of that fashion, the things that are appearing on there that are made by designers that are going to cost you thousands of dollars, and which is probably where the shopping like a billionaire comes in. So they produce it as quick as they can. Obviously, much cheaper, but it looks the same. It gives you some of that same feel, and it's over the last few years, like we were saying, it's raised some ethical, concerns on how it's affecting the environment. The regulation on a lot of those things. And so people are really sounding off more and more about maybe the potential dangers. And the thing that I feel the most uncomfortable about is there are so many other things in life to be conscious about that I'm just like,
right.
Need another thing.
That's what I'm thinking.
Man, I don't.
Well, but I don't think it's not just Temu though. I mean, I think there's been stories about H&M and other places you'd go to in the mall where they sell really cheap clothing and mark it up quite a bit. You know? So you buy a t-shirt there and you wash it and it shrinks into a baby crop top tee that you'll never wear again.
Alex might.
Maybe. Yeah. But I'm just saying like it's not, not to be like old man shaking his fist at the sun, but it's just, one of those things where I remember a time where you bought something that was like, oh, I have a coat and a jacket and a pair of shoes and a pair of jeans, and like you kind of just had that like your essentials and you lived with that. But now it's abundance, it's waste, it's a revolving door of consumerism at this point. So you just they chase these fashion trends. You buy it, you wear it once, it sits in your closet, or you take it to the Goodwill or throw it in the trash. I don't know.
I agree with you too, Alex. It's like there is so many things to think about. Even like thinking about like our last 10 episodes, like there's so many things that are happening in the world that we could be focusing on. This is not something necessarily that's like at the top of the radar. And then the other side of it is things I feel like are starting to become so inflated that even if you find a bargain, it's closer to the price you would think something should actually normally be. So we're not necessarily questioning where is it coming from or how is it produced. It's like, I need this. This is closer to how much I can actually afford.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy it. And then we're thinking about it in the roundabout way. And I will say, I have purchased from Temu. And it was not in the beginning to like find a bargain. I was looking for a specific thing I wanted to get for my clients in my office. Random. They're like these, it doesn't matter what I was buying unless you really want to know.
I mean, now I'm like, okay. I am very curious.
There's a specific type of sticker that I like to give my clients for anxiety, and they're really super duper expensive. They have rough edges. That you can like put on something and you can feel it. It helps grounding. There's like grounding exercise. Anyways, they were like $30 for like 4 or 5 of them. They're just high price. So I was searching for them and I found them on Temu, and it was like way cheaper. And I got like double the amount. And so I kind of feel like I got sucked in because it was something I needed and I was looking for somebody else. And then it truly is, like you guys are saying, like a rabbit hole. So I didn't like necessarily go out searching for a leather jacket, but I'm like, oh, is there some stocking stuffers in here that, because you can tell that things are maybe not necessarily high quality, but you just kind of all of a sudden get there. And what I'm saying is like, I didn't think about who it's affecting because it is far removed from us. And so I think that that's on me, and what we need to be doing more of is like, where are the things that we're bringing into our home or purchasing or spending our money? What are we supporting and doing with that? So I'm working on like being more conscientious about that. So right with everybody listening.
And in June, so there was a committee that was, nonpartisan, that really started to look into some of this because accusations were being made, and obviously it affects U.S. consumers and all that kind of stuff. And so they came up with a whole entire, report on this, and mostly aimed at the slave labor, in some of the areas of China that it's been reported and, documented that there has been some. And so they put together a bipartisan congressional team to look at this. And a couple of the key findings that they did find, and they released this in June of this year, you can find it online. One of them is that Temu and Shein are likely responsible for just more than 30% of all packages shipped to the U.S. every day. So, I mean, just even thinking that's a lot,
That's just crazy to me that many people are using it. I have no idea.
Those two companies, 30% of all packages shipped every day to the U.S. And another key finding that I saw, which is why they were looking into it, is Temu's specifically business model relies on basically trying to avoid any kind of compliance, national compliance, international compliance with forced labor and the supplies and shipping and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that they've done a good job of, essentially, Temu, not a good job, but they've been able to sneak through a lot of these compliance and all that the world tries to, because there are world organizations and governments that try what they can
to regulate
this. And so that's one of the reasons that it really, from a political angle, became kind of something that they're watching a lot more. And so,
yeah, which, I mean, I think they were relying on the de minimis provision. It's like something that even that term is interesting, because it's almost, I think it's like packages that are valued under $800 can kind of slide under the radar in certain instances. And so they're able to take advantage of that and avoid a lot of regulation because of that, because obviously they are not probably shipping many packages over $800. Yeah, and I mean it does it does bring into question, when you're talking about the ethics of it, and then also the human cost of this fast fashion industry or these cheap goods. I mean, I know that even Amazon, with Amazon Basics, they kind of target sales trends, and they look at what people are buying, and then Amazon goes and starts up their own manufacturing of those products and puts their own branding on it. Working condition, even of people in America working at Amazon warehouses. I mean, during the pandemic, we were hearing kind of horror stories of people being forced to wear diapers and, by their own choice, but they had no other choice because they couldn't, take a break. They were being worked so much. And it's like, that's in our own country that it's that bad. So you can imagine where there are much less regulations and the ability to use minors and pay extremely low wages that I don't know. It's I mean, even, Nike's come under fire for that before and different things like that. So it's just, it's really challenging, because I think we've maybe beat this dead horse, but where am I accountable to this? How much, yes, I feel for these people. What do I do? I mean, I think I said before the show started, I'm like, what, do I go homesteading and just live off the grid and I just make my own clothes and you just wonder, is that the only moral route right now, to live? Because how do you avoid we're just talking about one topic today,
right?
But there's just so much, you're just falling in these moral potholes everywhere you walk.
And I think, if you ask the question to public, if you just went and polled people and said, if your favorite brand, whatever one you're most loyal to, we'll just talk about clothing, if they used slave labor, would you want to know? And I think most people would probably say no, because that's where it gets uncomfortable, especially if you've really like a product. It's like a great, whatever brand, and because we have so much of our identity wrapped up more than we probably like to admit into the brands that we wear, that I would guess, I mean, for me, a lot of times, man, I'd like to plead the fifth. I'd like to be ignorant to some of these things, because then it's like, now I have an ethical responsibility as a human, and then we'll talk even more as a Christian, to make different choices. And a lot of the time, I know on the other end that the choice is going to be more expensive. It's going to be more costly, or it's going to, force me probably into more minimalism, as I probably should be forced into, but it's going to eat away at my desire to acquire, my consumerism. And so,
Well, and I think the other side of it is it's almost like politics. You look at, okay, I don't really like this candidate, or I don't like that candidate, or I don't like what's happening in my city or my state. But if I go vote, am I really going to make a difference? I think people ask that question sometimes, like, is my one vote going to change anything? And I think it's easy to get. It's easy to get cynical about that and go no. Mm-hmm. And I think you look at this and it's the same thing.
Right.
Okay, so what if I know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is me not buying that, $17, pair of shoes or whatever it is,
right.
Is that going to make a difference in this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can see, Eric, I can totally empathize with how you said, like, you feel like, okay, should I just go homestead and like go off the grid? Because with a lot of things, we can kind of find the gray, but when it comes to like humanitarian issues and the value of human life, that feels very black and white. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm either going to be all or nothing. So I think that that's the struggle with this stuff, is where is the medium without cutting everything out and going the complete opposite direction.
Well, and it's even, I've heard comparisons to even like the like vegan culture and things like that, where it's like, well, okay, I don't believe in the harming of animals, so I'm not going to eat meat. I'm not going to consume animal byproducts. But then you think, like, where do you draw the line? Like, okay, well, I'm not going to buy leather. Okay. Well, what about the clothes you're buying? What are the people that are manufacturing? What are they eating?
Yeah.
Are they eating meat? Because now you're still supporting the murder and whatever animal byproduct usage or cruelty to animals, whatever you believe there. So it's kind of this endless rabbit trail.
You can go as far as you want to go.
Yeah, like where does it end? Where have I actually, you see, even recently I've seen like protests on oil companies and things like that, and it's like, okay, well, that North Face jacket you're wearing while you're protesting the oil company, even though you're driving your Tesla, that jacket was made out of oil, and so maybe it isn't polluting the air directly, but the manufacturing very well is. And so it's just those things where it's hard to know where to end and go, I don't know. What do I, they had it right in the garden, I guess. Garden of Eden, that is.
And I think most of the time there's no perfect solution
Yeah.
either. I mean, you think of the gas, oil kind of conversation, and then going green and green energy and things like that. And we're finding out more and more, I mean, that some green energy is costing a lot more lives. It's costing, there's a lot more pains that come along with green energy as well, or power grids, and a lot of places aren't, sufficiently set up for those power grids. And so part of, I think, humanity's desire in this is like, how do I make a better choice, And a lot of times you are making a choice between, two things that aren't 100% ideal. It's a product of being born into a broken world. And so you're like you're not leaving one thing for something that's way, way better, or you're leaving it for something maybe that's slightly better. And then how do we figure out, okay, what's the damage? What's the collateral of the next, thing? And I think that's where it does get more complicated. And I think, like you mentioned, whether it was malls or this stuff has probably been happening longer than we realize.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously the internet and people with cameras in their pockets everywhere, all those kind of things are raising this awareness about these things.
Well, and I think even to what I said earlier, it's cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
So you were paying, $100 for your Air Jordans or whatever in the 80s and 90s, and you were it was like the corporation making all that money. And now with Temu, it's like, they're still paying pennies on the dollar to create this product, but you're the one who is, getting that cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
I guess I'm just reinforcing it has been happening a long time.
Yeah.
It's not something that's new. It's just
It's more accessible.
who's making the money or saving the money has changed.
So we've uncovered a problem.
Sure.
I think, and probably most people understand at some level that this is an issue. I guess, what are some of the ways that we can, like you said, what difference should we make? Like, what difference how do we start to draw awareness in our own lives about this? And what are some of the ways maybe that there's different seals or certifications that are out there to help us if we're like, okay, I need to start making some choices that are more ethical or, care about human rights and things like that? What are some tips, I guess, that we can start to process through?
I think for me, one of the things that this conversation has made me think, and it goes to a lot where I kind of have the practice in my own life of, okay, this is the issue and I want to fix it, but let me go farther back into why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. So even with something like this, I would ask the question, okay, I want a bargain and I'm looking for something that's cheap. I mean, I'm curious about that. So why do I need something that is this cheap? And even looking in that, there's so many articles and studies that if you could Google that say that if there is something cheaper, you're more likely to buy a bunch of things that add up to more than you were willing to spend anyways.
Yeah, right.
And so it's why are you needing something cheaper? Is that a budgeting issue? Is that is it something that you do need? And kind of evaluating, and I think we should all do this, of why are we looking for that? What's the root of that? Am I bored? Am I in need of something? And I think asking more questions on why are we looking for a bargain? Is there more than it just being an economic crisis and us wanting to look like we have a certain thing? I'm not saying that that's the whole answer, but I think it has a voice in this conversation of us asking, why are we doing this? Can we not spend this money and save up for the Apple AirPods? What do you want?
The Max. Yeah.
The Max. You know
Air,
what I mean?
Yeah. Not the, never mind.
Sorry.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where you start, when you have that conversation with someone, you're almost taking this approach of having the moral high ground, and then I think that makes it really uncomfortable,
Right.
and then people don't want to hear okay, I mean anybody who's
I
had
hope
to
it didn't
listen
sound
to
like
someone
that. Yeah.
talk about veganism or anything
Right.
else, it's okay, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't. You're on your high horse, so it's even starting those conversations
I know,
to me
it's
seems
cringy.
tough, because it's well, I'm not really making that many changes that I should be trying to affect this person's life as well, until I don't know.
I think it's also
messy.
hard if you haven't also done it. It sounds like someone could be being judgmental too of oh, well, you've purchased from that site.
Yeah.
Have you ever?
How dare you?
Yeah. I never.
And I think at the core, it forces us, and this is where it gets maybe most uncomfortable, is to wrestle through really tough identity questions. I mean, at the end of the day, do I need more pairs of jeans? No, but those jeans, if I wear them now, yes, they have no holes in them. They're perfect, but well, no, now they're not in style anymore, And so I'm going to look stupid if I wear, this set of jeans or this shirt, or
Are you saying you're finally giving up skinny jeans and going to the wide legs?
Going to the wide legs.
Okay.
No, I haven't made that decision
I don't
yet.
know.
I will
Can
let
we
everyone
vote
on
on
the
that?
podcast know.
Yeah.
I mean, but it happens in our houses.
Yeah, it does.
It happens with, I've got a perfect, functional kitchen, but I need what's nicer because it's, I have brass door handles, and, brass door handles are the worst.
Brass.
So now
Love
I
how
need
he
a different
says
color. And so at the core, and there is, I think, some God-given desire for creation and restoring things and all of that comes into play. But at the end of the day, a lot of it becomes about my self-reflection on how much is my identity really rooted in this kind of stuff and other people's opinions of me. And mine is way too rooted in it. If I'm honest, it's way too rooted oftentimes in what everybody else is going to think about me. And a lot of my choices, probably subconsciously, not even consciously, are being made as a result of my lack of security, my lack of identity being in Christ, in my desire to want to impress people, to look like I have things to put together. And so that's just a thing I have to crucify daily in my own life to even start to make some of these decisions. But but it forces you to look at those things, and I don't want to look at those things very often. And that's where it gets really difficult, is then I have to admit those types of things about myself, and that feels super yucky.
Yeah. Something I also wish I would have done from just being a consumer of and purchasing off of one of these sites previously is I wish I would have thought, oh, why is this so cheap? Or like, why is this so affordable, and done research, like even ask the question, like, because it's out there. If you look it up, I mean, we very easily found information of questionable things. And so I wish that I would have done that when I saw that. So I think it's like, okay, is this too good to be true? Like, I'm seeing this, somewhere else for way more money. How is this so cheap on here? And just even asking the question or doing a quick Google search of that.
Well, there's some practical ways, even when you're purchasing items, to look at certifications that can be found on tags or labels, things like Fair Trade, B Corp, GOTS, which stands for Global Organic Textile Standard. These certifications often require companies to adhere to specific ethical and environmental standards. So, again, I don't know. It's a little thing, and you think, well, maybe this helps to watch out for that stuff, but you could just be consumed with it too, and that's probably not good either.
Yeah, I think one of the I wish there was more transparency overall, and maybe that's unfortunately probably legislation's going to have to force that. I think of menus, over the last, 10, 15 years, they've had, like, companies and restaurants have had to put calorie counts and sugar count, like all that kind of stuff on their products, red dye, like a lot of these things. And so, and just giving the consumer more information and backstory around those kinds of things. And that's what I think, some of those labels and some of those certifications are trying to do. You have to have these strict standards. You have to meet these strict standards to be labeled this kind of thing. And so I think it will have to be some legislation.
And I think from a human standpoint, I hope I speak for most people when I say ultimately it would be best if this just didn't exist. Yeah. Like if there wasn't a human cost for me to, like you said, Alex, purchase something just, for my identity or for whatever. It's just that I think most of us would just hope that at the end of the day, there shouldn't have to be a label whether this was ethically created.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's heartbreaking in some ways to think that this is even a conversation we have to have, because these are just people like us, and like we maybe can look at it as winning some sort of cosmic lottery that we're not, in this position to where this is what we have to do for our livelihoods, is to work, and so it's just, I don't know. You can get yourself, I think, into almost a disparity of just, there's no hope in the world, like if you start more and more of these topics that we start to pile on ourselves and just go, what do we do about it? How do we, or you just do the other thing and don't think about it and just go on with your life. Right. Yeah.
And that's the easy thing, because it's going to cost you more time to do research.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you probably more bottom line, your budget to do research, or it's going to cost you just less time to joy shop, because things cost more. You're buying ethically to do the research, to pay the money. It's just going to cost a lot more, because it costs more to have these regulations and to have people going into these companies and giving the stamp of approval that they're doing these things right. It's like the restaurant industry. I want people going in there and checking the kitchen and making sure there's not mice and making sure there's not cockroaches, and that they're in good standing, to know that, hey, somebody's looking over these things ethically.
It's like even the USDA. People checking out meat and the quality of that. Like, I know sometimes people are like, oh, get the government out of everything, but it's like, you probably don't want to go back to the times before the USDA. When people were just getting sick from buying meat at the grocery store because there were no standards.
I also think that we just also want to caution people that this is not an episode that we're creating and discussing for this to be a weapon that you send to somebody because they were super excited that they did fill your stocking with things that they found on Temu that reminded you of them. And so I think that there's space for us to maybe have a little bit of conversation around that too, because we will probably encounter someone even this holiday season that is really excited about something that they got somebody off a site like that. And so, being conscious of how we're coming off and how we're presenting that information. Like, Eric, I think you're a great example of like really honoring your dad, of like, he bought something off of that, but not one time, like on or off the air when you've told us that. Have you ever like made fun of him or criticized him or talked less of him? And so I think that there's a way to have this conversation and to never shame somebody. And so I think that you have done a great job.
I criticized you a lot about those stickers. That's no, I'm kidding. I just don't. I think it's tough because for me it's in such a moral gray area where you can't assume that that everybody's going to see something what no matter what it is, that they even have gone one layer below the surface of this advertisement they got served up on Facebook or something like that, to where we're going like 10 layers down.
Right.
And it's like, you can't expect anyone to even be there. You just can't at the end of the day. And so people are we're used to living in a capitalistic society. This is what we do. We shop and purchase goods for ourselves and our family. And at Christmas, if we find it, it's just kind of at the base level of our identity as Americans. And so we're not going to think beyond that. And so I can't, because I would be criticized 10 times for criticizing one person for it. We all just consume. That's what we do as a nation. So just to think that, oh yeah, I'm going to be so critical of this person for a decision that they made that is just so natural and so just like a reflex almost, it's just how we interact with things.
And we live in such a broken world that none of us has the capacity to fix it all or to be 100% passionate about how can I right every single wrong. If I knew every wrong, and how every decision I ever made affected people, I couldn't bear that weight in my own life. And so I think it is important to know that inviting the Spirit to be a part of these conversations and the right pace of conviction and all of those, like not to just have a scapegoat. Oh, I heard it and I don't have to deal with it, but inviting, hey, man, how is this something that you're trying to, awaken in my soul? Is there something even deeper beyond that, a longing for maybe an identity for me type of thing that I'm searching for in my shopping, I think is one thing. But I do think there are some, if you're like, hey, I want to start to figure this out, because not everything on Temu is made by a child, or is not all made by people that are slaves, that are modern day child slave labor. Not everything there is, or on Shein or Wish. And so it's just a place where a lot of that is happening, and it's hard to decipher where's that happening or not. And so there are a few different platforms, of people that are really passionate about this kind of stuff that have created. So just wanted to highlight a couple of those. One is called Boycott. Clever.
Not boycott.
One
letter different there.
But it's a app where you can get it on your phone. Usually they also have a website, but you can scan barcodes on products as you're shopping, and it'll talk about ethical concerns, maybe about.
Wait, so when I'm scanning to see if it's on my Target Red discount, I have to also scan it on this first?
Yeah,
okay, now I have to have two apps running while I shop.
Yes, correct.
You're burdening me, Alex.
I know. Ethical Consumer is another app that you can get, and website that just talks about a lot of the companies that are using some of these places or the regions of the world that are have been responsible for some of this slave labor. And so it'll just kind of point, hey, maybe this product that you're purchasing is that. And then there's a thing called Tier Fund, which is just an ethical shopping guide. So it'll help you if you're, instead of going through the motions of like, hey, instead of scanning Eric, you can go here first. And then it'll point you to some companies or organizations that are selling things. And then you do the shopping, like you start there. And then you're like, okay, these are companies or products or brands that I can begin to explore for helping make some of those, those decisions as well. And so I think that's a part of it. Or just some tools, and there's plenty more out there. Those are just a couple that I actually downloaded and was like, okay, this seems like it works, and I'm comfortable recommending it. I did not do a deep dive into who runs it and all of their ways they voted and where they stand, on the authority of Scripture or things like that. And so, but they are helpful. Yeah, they seemed like they were the most user friendly.
So speaking of the authority of Scripture. The thing we always have to ask, what did the What did the Bible say about Temu? It's a question I ask myself quite often, and I don't know. We go there a lot on this podcast because that's the name of the conversations about culture and Christianity, and I think we're intersecting that, and it's so tough because we are using something that was written in a different time, different culture, different society makeup, like all of that stuff was so different. Not that it doesn't apply to us or we can't find the meaning in it, but when we're comparing it like today to an app on my phone, which there was nothing even remotely close to that existing in the time of Scripture, how do I practically apply this to my life? I'm looking at Minister Alex over here right now.
Yeah, I think a couple places you can go. Obviously, the Proverbs, maybe that's not obvious, but there's just words of wisdom throughout the Proverbs. In Proverbs 31, it just tells us, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of those who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. And so in a circumstance like this, we can overlay it on, hey, man, there are people, and there's plenty of other ways you can overlay it, but in this context, there are people that we need to speak up for their rights. We need to have these conversations because they don't have them. They don't have a voice. And if we continue to just do life as we always have done, then we're just continuing to marginalize them and continuing to know that we are, one, not speaking up for them, and two, probably even making their lives worse or continuing to let this problem happen. James, is kind of the wisdom book of the New Testament and it says, look at the wages you failed to pay your workers who mowed your fields and are crying out against you. These cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. And so this is a warning in James towards, man, the cries of these people God is hearing, and you're participating in something that can be wicked, knowing that you're hurting people, knowing that the decisions that you're making are essentially you're cheating people, robbing people. It can become weighty, to consider that. And, ultimately Jesus, encourages us in Luke 12 and other places, but sell your possessions and give to the poor, provide purses for yourself that will never wear out, your treasures in heaven. And that's never going to fail, where no thief comes, no moths destroy, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And Jesus talks so often about the heart being, the center of what it means to be human. And that's what a lot of these companies are after. The best advertising companies aren't trying to convince your head that you need a product. They're trying to convince your heart that you have these feelings that if you get this product, then it's going to make you feel a certain way. It's going to, whether it's nostalgia or, that feeling that you're going to get watching someone open that present, that they're going to deliver ultimately on feelings, because if they can get your heart, then they've got you captured. And so I think continuing to ask those questions, that are really identity questions of where is my treasure? What is the way I spend? What is the way I use my time? And again, those are heavy questions, and it's not like sit down for 5 minutes and consider it all, but asking the Spirit to unveil at a proper pace, maybe that next step that He's trying to convince and convict you of, to take a step towards helping people, to take a step towards speaking up for those who are marginalized, the poor, the needy. And I think if we all listen to the Spirit at the end of the day, then we're going to be helping redeem and restore a place that is broken. Yet it's always going to be longing for that ultimate creation, that ultimate restoration that Christ promises He will give when there is one day no more tears, no more pain, no more suffering. And so that's my sermonette.
I also think, especially spiritually, I don't know if anybody else struggles with this, but I can hear that and feel a lot of shame or overwhelmed. Like I have to fix all of this. And so I think that this is where also like our relationship with the Lord totally comes into play, in where He speaks to each one of us on the podcast and each one of our listeners completely uniquely, because we can have a personal relationship with Him. And so even, even in what you said, Alex, was so good. And so that I'm praying, like, as you're speaking, like, God, what do you want me to take out of this piece? Like, it feels like a lot and can be very consuming, but I feel like, the Lord draws us into where he wants us to go, and he doesn't shame us through things. So I'm like, okay, God, where do you want to lead me through this? And I think looking at it more like that versus like, oh, now I'm like, I have to consider all this. Like, that's not the message we want to send. That's not the message that you were saying, Alex, but just reminding people of that the Lord wants us to, he invites us into this. He doesn't, shame us into anything.
Yeah. A couple things that I've just found helpful. One is we've had him on the podcast before. His name's Joshua Becker. I think episode 44 is when we had him on. And he talks a lot about minimalism and just our desire to acquire and how you can live a much more simple life if you can buy into, this. And I'm not at all where Joshua Becker is on this. I think
we can tell by your Santa shirt.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
You needed that though.
Yeah, for sure. I needed this. So I'm not all the way where he is, but I think the way he does it in his blog, Becoming Minimalist, is in a way that is like what you said, Jess. I mean, it's convicting for me, but at the same time, it's accessible and it's not condemning or shaming, but it's inviting people into his journey. And I think even, around Christmas is one of those times where, we do really want to give. Most of us do realize, it is so much better to give than to receive. And so there's a few different, ways that I think you can be thinking through. I found one conscious Christmas hierarchy. Like, how do I start to think about my gift giving in ethical ways? Are there, fancier ways to just DIY something or get something secondhand or give an experience rather than, gift someone an experience, whether it's a class or something like that, rather than a product. And so that's one of the things that or donate in somebody's name. Maybe, man, there's so many times I buy something and it's just like, I'm just literally buying this because if I don't show up, then I look like a jerk, but I also know they don't need anything, like nothing that I could give them. Like, it's going to end up in a donation somewhere, and we just wasted everybody's time. And so maybe there's some of those opportunities where, man, you can donate in that person's name in some kind of way, and that will live on a lot further. So those are some of the things I've processed, wrestled through a little bit that have been helpful, at least for me. Yeah. And I am very far from perfect, with this.
And I would just caution people listening to, like, this isn't meant to be virtue signaling either.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of times you hear, during the pandemic, people wearing masks. Oh, if you're wearing a mask, you're telling me I should be wearing a mask because you're wearing a mask, and it's just like, I think it's just like we've said and multiple times, it's as you discover new information, it's good to think about how we interact with it. If you're going to have a conversation with a friend or a family member about this, start it with, hey, I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about this thing. What do you think? Come at it from a place of humility, not, oh, well, I can't believe you use Temu. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, just it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't strengthen relationships. It ultimately just builds up walls when we come up at it from this way. So, I think that's the way I'm approaching it, at least personally. Like, as I discover these things and learn more about it, it's a challenge for me. This is like a personal confession, I guess, but like I mentioned veganism a couple of times, and like that's always been a strange conviction of mine, even though I'm not. Like, I've wrestled with it because I really have a problem with the way animals are treated and things like that, and it's like, and I'll say that to people, like, I almost wish I could be a vegan. I wish I could figure that out. Like, and I still probably wrestle with that. I don't know what that looks like for me. And it's like a weird thing because when I say that, immediately people, their walls go up. Oh, well, I don't care about that. I'm not giving up meat. What are you, crazy? So it's this really delicate dance that you have to have when you're having these conversations, because I think people are always first and foremost thinking of themselves. Even though you may come at something with the most honest of intentions, people are thinking of themselves. And so they're going to feel threatened immediately. Just like you said, Jess, maybe someone did spend their hard-earned money on Christmas gifts from Temu or something like that, so people are going to be threatened immediately with these types of conversations, and you just got to be cautious and careful and kind-hearted in the way I think you engage with people.
which is why for 199 episodes, I love this podcast. I mean, love being at a place where we can have these conversations. We're not going to get up on a Sunday morning and preach, hellfire and brimstone against Temu or something like that. But it's a place where these are discipleship conversations. Yeah. It is, at the intersection of culture and Christianity, and we all have choices that we get to make where Jesus is trying to make us more in his image. And it can be in shopping, it can be in how we eat, it can be in a lot of those spaces. And so I love that we get to have those conversations and wrestle through it. And half the time I'm like, I did not even consider that until someone sent that idea to us or whatever. And so just grateful for that because we are all in process. And there's probably things that I said on episode 2 that I'm like, I would probably phrase that differently even now.
Oh, 100%. 100. I think we're all there with you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. Again, I want to remind you this is our last episode of 2023. So we will return in the new year's. And we'll find us again on a Friday in January. We'll be waiting for you in wherever, whatever podcast feed you use or YouTube. But I do want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. That's from all of us here. And if you're still doing your shopping, you better not do it on Temu. That's what I'm just kidding. I learned nothing from this episode. All right. Well, if you have any questions or concerns or, voicemail or hate mail you want to send our way, go send it to 402 or leave us a voicemail 402-885-9930. You can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org or reach out to us on social media on Instagram and TikTok at CCC OMA podcast. And that's a great place. If you go there, you can see clips. If you missed an episode, you can see what we're talking about. Maybe share that with a friend. It's always fun. Help help the message get out there a little more, get a few more listeners. You could always rate and review our episode or our podcast in general on whatever platform you listen to, if that's iTunes or something out there on Android. Jess, what do you listen to podcasts on? I'm not.
I listen to podcasts on Audible.
On Amazon?
Audible.
Or, you
Audible,
sent us a
okay.
podcast last week of another podcast talking about our podcast, and it was like, I'm like, I didn't know they did podcasts.
I didn't know Audible did that. No, I figured you would have been like a Spotify user or something.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thanks everybody. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too, Jess and Alex. Hopefully you have a blessed New Year.
You too.
Thanks.
And we'll see you on the other side on a big episode 200. It's the biggest thing ever. I'm just going to overpromise and underdeliver at this point. Goodbye, everyone. We'll talk to you then or later or something like that. I'm already on vacation. I'm on Christmas break. So we'll see you guys later.